What's cracking, guys? Omar Isaf here, back with another video. We got the Sacktown boys together training here at Untamed Strength. If you're in Sacramento, check it out. Decided to do a little bit of a response video. I saw first that Mike made one in regards to Robert Oberst, a strongman competitor who was on Joe Rogan. The video recently has gotten several million views. The title of the video, I think, was something along the lines that you should not deadlift, or why you shouldn't deadlift. And basically what Robert said, to paraphrase, is essentially that if you want to get stronger on the deadlift, then you should do deadlifts, but essentially for everybody else, you shouldn't be doing it, that the risk to reward ratio is not there. And Joe Rogan actually was quite surprised. And we just want to dissect that a little bit, talk about exercise selection overall, how you should go about choosing your exercises, and also examining how dangerous are deadlifts really. I want to first turn to Mike, a powerlifter who has deadlifted 700 pounds, coached a lot of athletes, who made his response. Mike, what's your opinion in terms of what Robert said?
Yeah, first off, I want to say that Robert didn't go too much into context, and obviously when we're talking about building strength, building muscle, whatever we're talking about, it depends on the athlete, the goal, their history. A lot of factors go into involved when we're talking about exercise variation and prescribing a workout for somebody. He mostly references football players, and so we're talking about maybe gaining a little bit of size, being a little bit stronger, hitting a little harder, jumping a little faster, et cetera, et cetera. And I think that no exercise is necessary. A lot of people in the NFL are absolute freak athletes. Eric and I were talking about Bo Jackson, who I've heard rumor, even Jerry Rice, never touched a weight in their life, some of the fastest, baddest men on the planet. Now, I do think that deadlifts, broad category, if we're talking conventional straight bar deadlifts, maybe aren't for everyone, or they're not the most optimal choice for everyone. Now, can we get stronger in a hip hinge type position with a lot of different lifts? Yeah. Bands, chains, sometimes you can't get in the best starting position off the bottom, and sort of lighten the load down there. Maybe we pull against some bands for maybe a taller athlete or someone with some mobility issues, something like that. Obviously a trap bar deadlift allows majority of people to be in a very good position. In either straight bar or trap bar deadlift, we can start to elevate that thing, bring it up your shins depending on the type of athlete, and get in a really good, potentially reducing the risk of injury. Now, with any kind of lifts, he references college football or NFL football, where you're talking about the most common lifts being squat, some type of press, often the bench press in football, and a hang clean or power clean. I don't know the data. We're going to go to Eric in a bit, but I'd imagine that a squat, the risk of injury there, power clean, hang clean, are all very, very similar, if not more, if not the exact freaking same as any type of deadlift. Now, any time we get in the weight room, we have chance of getting injured, and it all depends on how far you push something. If you're deadlifting for the sake of deadlifting or to get stronger for 10 years, and you're squeezing every ounce, every kilo out of the bar you can, probably the risk of injury goes up. If we're a college football player that deadlifts here and there, and we're just trying to maintain some kind of muscularity and strength in the off season or even in season, because obviously they have 6 days off, and we deadlift on Mondays after a training day at RPE 7 for some triples, I think the risk is pretty low with proper coaching, proper technique, and it probably is more beneficial. If we're talking about being explosive, it talks about being explosive in a clean and jerk, or sorry, a power clean. I could do a lot of different plyos. Med ball tosses are really pretty much injury-free. Never heard a lot of people getting injured chucking a med ball over their head. And there's a lot of variations in areas that we can look into when prescribing athletic type training.
Yep. So now I want to turn to Alan. I want to turn to someone who is a strongman competitor, a strongman enthusiast.
A strongman himself.
A strongman himself, a strong guy, a hot guy, babe.
Wow, thank you guys.
Who is also a strength coach, who's put out some great content. Alan, what's your opinion on the video that you saw or the statements made by Robert?
Yeah, first off, I should say that I'm currently suffering a throat injury, so my voice is a bit off.
Was it from deadlifts?
From deadlifts. Yeah, it's a cover-up.
I don't think that any movement is inherently bad. Deadlifting, squatting below parallel, squatting above parallel maybe, lunges, lateral raises. I don't think that any movement is inherently bad. I think that it could be poorly managed or misloaded, but I don't think that saying a blanket statement like you shouldn't deadlift or deadlifts are bad, you should be able to back it up if you say something like that. So that's really all that I have to say now about that.
Eric, what's your opinion as a strength and conditioning coach, someone that also takes a look at research? You mentioned previously to me, per 1,000 hours performed, powerlifters, weightlifters, the injury rate compared to other sports, professional sports, contact sports, how it's a lot lower. Can you just comment both as a strength and conditioning coach, but then also taking a look a little bit at the research?
Yeah, so I'll say I'm I wouldn't say I'm a strength conditioning coach. I would say that I've studied strength conditioning at the highest level, and I've worked. That sounds like arrogant. I have a PhD in strength and conditioning, but I am not a strength and conditioning coach at the highest level. Although I rub shoulders with many of them, and I've seen what they do. I do work with powerlifters and bodybuilders, and pretty extensively. One thing I can say is at the highest level of strength conditioning, I do understand where he's coming from, and that not hurting your athlete is paramount. And making sure that they can perform. And it's very much taking a more conservative approach as an S&C coach the higher level you get, which may be counterintuitive to some of the young trainers out there who are thinking you've got to get more complex, more advanced. Strength conditioning, your role is more and more important, when actually you just start biting your nails more and more and more the higher level you get. So I understand that the risk to reward ratio changes as you work with higher level athletes. With that said, I think I totally agree with Alan, and that there's no such thing as a bad or good exercise, just like there's no such thing as a bad or good food. And that's just not the right paradigm to be looking at movements. Is there a role for picking things up off the ground, having a concentric bias movement, and trying to get stronger with a hip hinge? Of course. And I think anything that starts from a dead stop and you lift with a hip hinge counts as a deadlift, whether it's a suitcase deadlift, a single leg RDL, a hex bar deadlift, which is incredibly common in S&C because athletes are quite tall. You can use a high handle position. So I just think there needs to be more nuance to that statement. If you want to say, a conventional barbell deadlift loaded to a 1RM doesn't have a strong role for football players, I could probably get behind that. However, if you want to call something a deadlift, that includes every variation of Olympic lift that starts from the ground begins with a deadlift, or at least a clean pull, depending on how pedantic you want to get. So I do think you need to qualify these statements, especially when you're speaking to a broad audience.
Right.
That's my main position there. Now, as far as the research perspective, if we look at some of the data on powerlifters, you see a similar rate of injury in the shoulders as you do the lower back. So if we were to make a statement about the deadlift being more inherently injurious, we would then have to also say, well, so is the bench press. And maybe that's what he believes. Maybe they shouldn't be pressing, maybe they shouldn't be deadlifting. But I don't think there's good data, at least in lifters who are proficient in the skill of deadlifting, powerlifters, that it is a more risky movement than, say, a squat or a bench press. The data doesn't support that. What that really does support is that if you want to do any lift, you need to learn how to do the lift.
Right.
And I think, football players may have more injuries on deadlifts because if you go to any, I'm going to be mean to football players, if you go to any like high school S&C football gym,
A lot of heart, not a lot of technique.
power cleans and deadlifts look terrible. And you're probably wincing, and the S&C coach is typically underqualified or at least overworked, so that he doesn't have the opportunity, he or she, to effectively teach each one of the lifters to deadlift. So I think that's another reason to potentially stay away from the conventional barbell deadlift, to be generous. You might do something like kettlebell swings, you might do something like a hex bar deadlift, you might just do plyometrics. I could understand the rationale, but that's more from the logistics of teaching rather than some inherent issue with the deadlift itself.
Perfect. I am glad that we got 3 different opinions on this topic, just because I saw that it was trending, and in particular some of the comments in the comment section from individuals. We're all in this little bubble in the industry where we like to lift, we like to talk about lifting, we like to get stronger, but one of my concerns was potentially confirming some of the inherent biases some people might have, like, oh, I did deadlifts one time and I hurt my back, therefore deadlifts are trash, or they're just not for me, without giving them a fair shake or not having the proper perspective. So it was a 20-second clip that then was put into a YouTube video that then got millions of views, so perhaps giving more context for a general audience. I just want to thank everyone for watching this video. I want to thank my guests for being on. I'm going to link every single Instagram in the description, including the biggest hunk of them all, Connor behind the camera. If you enjoyed this video, if you liked this video, make sure to like the damn video, and I'll see all you guys, my rascals, in that next one. Peace.